Hi everybody, JA here from the Vault Studios NFL podcast, and welcome to a video about our 2019 All-Pro lineup. I just wanted to run through before we get into all the positions, my selection theories, the team I'm selecting, how I'm going to select them, and basically any little rules. Okay, so I want to start with my theories. Team success over statistics. So this doesn't mean that I'm going to just completely avoid statistical guys, because statistics are really important, especially when you're selecting individuals for a team. They're super important because you've got guys that get high sack numbers, high interception numbers, high reception numbers, high passing numbers. So whether they're on a bad team or not really shouldn't dictate that all the time. What my point is, if I've got two guys that are reasonably close together in terms of statistics and success and their play, I'm going to go with team success as more of a tiebreaker. That's kind of my theory with that. When we go to my next point, must pass the eye test. So the eye test for me, if you've listened to our podcast and listened to all our stuff, you should know what the eye test is. Basically, when you watch them, there are guys that stand out. There are guys that pass your eyes, that catch your eye, and you notice them more, whether they get stats or not. You know, I've watched plenty of games this season where I go, man, that guy dominated, and I go and check the box score and he had one tackle or one catch, you know, or gave up a couple of sacks for an offensive lineman. So it's not always about the statistics. It must pass the eye test. Now, my selection theory for my team, on offense, I've obviously got a quarterback, a running back. I'm going with 3 wide receivers. Some guys like to do 2 wide receivers and then a flex, which can be a running back or a receiver. For me, I just went with the straight 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and then obviously your standard offensive line, which is 2 tackles, 2 guards, and a center. I didn't do positional. If I've got a guy, if the 2 best tackles in the league were both left tackles, I picked them both, and 1 can play right tackle in my team. That'll be fine. On defense, I went a little bit different. There's a couple of extra players. So obviously with the schemes, I don't like doing a scheme. I don't like saying I'm a 4-3 or a 3-4 because I think that kind of takes away guys. So what I do is I go with positional areas. So I've got 2 defensive interior guys and 2 edge defenders, 2 linebackers. If you want to know how I categorize them, I used Pro Football Focus to categorize it. So wherever they had guys ranked in their positional series, so if they were interior defensive linemen, edge players, or linebackers off ball, I went off that. I also went with the 2 corners, 2 safeties, 1 nickel. Now, my nickel can be a safety or a corner. Basically, I want 5 defensive backs on my team. That's what I wanted to pick. So it can be a corner or a safety. So if you're comparing, feel free, if you want to take my nickel guy out and put in another corner or another safety, it's up to you. You can pick whichever defensive back you want. And then lastly, I went with the 3rd down pass rusher. Every team has them. I think they're super important to schemes now. Most teams have a guy that comes in specifically to rush. So in my team, I wanted to have that specific guy as well. Lastly, if you disagree, don't just come at me and say you're wrong because of this. Give me who your replacement is. I said, this is really hard to pick. There's so many guys that are deserving of this team. So it was difficult for me to pick guys at times. I went back and forth with myself trying to work out, who to pick. So if you disagree, that's fine. I expect that. But give me your replacement and then let me say, yeah, fair point. There are lots of guys that missed out on this team that were deserving that just couldn't get in because of the limit of players. All right. Lastly, before we get into my team, if you want to give us a follow, all forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Obviously, this is our YouTube video. It's our first one. So give us a like, give us a tick, and please subscribe and click on the little bell so you get all our notifications when videos go up, because I am going to start becoming a lot more active now. I want to release 1 YouTube video a week in this sort of vein. It's not just going to be a news. It's going to be more about like teams. And then I want to release a new segment for people who are new to the game and learning the game, about learning the basics. So that's what I want to do. But without further ado, let's get into the quarterback for my 2019 All-Pro team. This one's a really simple one for me. Lamar Jackson. He hasn't been announced the MVP, but I think he's going to win it. When I watch this guy, he's the most athletic guy on the field. He certainly plays at a different level to most other quarterbacks. Really, you look at his stats, the passing yards aren't amazing. 3,000, just over 3,000 yards. It's not exceptional, but it's still really good. 36 touchdowns is outstanding, only the 6 interceptions. He only played 15 games. He sat out the last game, so whether that affects it much, I don't know. But this is where the big ticket is for him, the rushing yards. 1,206 rushing yards, which breaks the record for quarterbacks. That's an insane amount of rushing yards for a quarterback. The scheme he plays in is awesome. You've really got to look after Harbaugh and thank him for putting this in this scheme and allowing Lamar Jackson to be the player he is, because it's super exciting to watch. And then the 7 rushing touchdowns. So you look at that, he's over 40 touchdowns total for the year. Very impressive. They also won a lot of football games. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. So he's on a good team. I'm very excited to see what Lamar Jackson can do in the playoffs. The running back for my team, Christian McCaffrey of the Carolina Panthers. Again, this was a no-brainer for me. I know there were some other really good running backs this year on better teams. And as I said before, I know I said that I'm going to take team success over yardage and stats, but you cannot look past this guy. So 1,387 rushing yards, a 4.8 average, 15 touchdowns, only the 1 fumble. He then had 116 receptions, 1,000 yards. He's only the 3rd ever player to have join the 1,000 club, which is insane. He also had the four receiving touchdowns, which is 19 total on the year. So for me, I just could not look past this guy. He's so versatile. He's a good pass protector. Obviously a great receiving back. Obviously a great running back. I think to take away from him because of his lack of team success would be wrong, because he was the one shining light on a pretty average team. They also had a backup quarterback for the year and then a 3rd string at one point. So the fact that he was able to do this, Christian McCaffrey, he walks into my team, and I'm pretty happy and excited to see what he can do in the future. He's broken a few records. He came painfully close to breaking the total yards record. He's 3rd behind CJ2K, Chris Johnson, and Marshall Faulk. So he just fell about 110 yards behind them both. So hopefully he can do it and break that in the next couple of years, but certainly an exciting start to his career for Christian McCaffrey, and earns himself a spot on the All-Pro team. My wide receivers, as I said, I went with the 3. I'll start with Michael Thomas. This was a landslide for me for number 1 receiver. He broke the receptions yards. So you can see 149 receptions. That's the record for receptions in a season. 1,700 yards, 11.6 average, 9 touchdowns. This guy catches over 95% of the balls thrown to him. You have to also take into account he played 5 games, I believe, without Drew Brees this year and still put up this sort of production. The guy's a freak show. He is really uncoverable. Teams just cannot stop this guy. He's going into the playoffs. I cannot wait to see him play. But yeah, an outstanding number 1 receiver, and certainly a no-brainer for me with him. DeAndre Hopkins, I think I might get some backlash for DeAndre Hopkins here. 101 receptions, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. He did miss a couple of games and was hurt in another where he left, so his stats are affected by that. But DeAndre Hopkins is one of the cleanest route runners in the NFL. He's so good at running routes, and when he gets hot and when him and Deshaun Watson get into a bit of a rhythm, he's almost impossible to stop. He took over games several times this year in the last quarter to win them games. The biggest one was 3 weeks ago. Sorry, I think it was week 15 against the Tennessee Titans, where he took over the game in the last quarter. The last drive had 5 receptions and got them the win, and then helped them win that division with that win. So I think he's awesome. I love DeAndre Hopkins. Some of the best hands. I'd say he'd have the best hands in the league, but he'd be fighting with Michael Thomas for that, and he unfortunately might lose. But yeah, really an outstanding season for DeAndre Hopkins again. And my 3rd guy, a slot guy. There was a lot of receivers you could have picked. Julio Jones was up there for me. Plenty of guys. But the guy I went with Chris Godwin. And this is one of the toughest selections for me. I went with him because he played as a genuine slot receiver a lot, which means he was in the slot, doing that role for Bruce Arians in his offense. He was 3rd in the league in yards, and he missed 2 games with 1,333, also the 9 touchdowns. And I like rewarding guys that break out. Godwin has been promising to break out for the past 2 years, and now we finally saw it this year. That system is awesome. Mike Evans was another guy in that system who's probably a bit unlucky to miss out on this team, but I had to go with Chris Godwin, and it really came down to the fact that he played a lot more slot than a lot of the other guys. Julio Jones doesn't play a lot of slot receiver. Mike Evans doesn't play a lot of slot receiver. So it was hard to pick those guys over a genuine slot. So I went with Chris Godwin. My next guy is the tight end, George Kittle. Again, not the easiest one. Travis Kelce had a really good year as well. I think he was 3rd in the league in receiving yards, so he was awesome. Also, Darren Waller in Oakland was unbelievable this year. But George Kittle, he missed 3 games, still had a 1,000-yard season with 1,053, 5 touchdowns, but the difference in all these guys, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, they're all great receivers. They all get the ball. They can all catch. They all score touchdowns. They all get yards. The difference was the way Kittle dominates as a blocker for me. He set up a really good San Fran running game with his blocking on the edge, his ability to move in motion and chip linebackers and defensive ends. And then also when he catches the ball, he's one of the toughest guys to bring down. There were games this year where against the Saints, to name one, which basically got them the number 1 seed winning that game against the Saints, he in the last quarter, he broke 3 or 4 touchdowns on a touchdown run. 3 or 4 tackles on a touchdown run and just was outstanding. So I had to go with George Kittle this year. Happy to hear arguments on that one though. My offensive line, I'll start with my offensive tackles. I know a lot of people are probably going to sleep, but this is my bread and butter. I love the offensive line play in the NFL. I went with Ronnie Stanley of the Baltimore Ravens, 407 yards per game, 206 rushing yards per game, which led the league, and 0 sacks allowed. That's massive for me. Plus, again, with offensive line, it's hard to go on stats. So I go on team success as well, hence why I've got the team rushing yards and total yards. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. He's in his 4th year, going into his 5th year. So another young guy who stepped it up this year and was one of the best tackles in the NFL. So I had to go with him there. My other tackle, who would play right tackle, I guess, for me, which he did play all season, was Ryan Ramczyk of the New Orleans Saints. Some people might disagree with this one. I thought he was outstanding. He only gave up 1 sack for the year, which was actually in the last game of the season. 373 yards per game and 108 rushing yards per game. So the team statistics aren't as good, but these are the New Orleans Saints, who are the 3rd in the league. And Ryan Ramczyk had an absolutely outstanding season. He was also the number 1 rated tackle by Pro Football Focus. For what that's worth, I think Pro Football Focus are a great tool to use, but shouldn't be taken as gospel. But the fact that my eye passed this guy all year and he was great, and then Pro Football Focus backed it up, it's enough for me. Let's move into my guards and center, and I want to start with Marshall Yanda, who's going to play the left guard spot for me. Again, another Baltimore Raven. You've seen the yards, only allowed 1 sack this year. This guy has been a model of consistency along the line for the best team in football. He helped Lamar Jackson, the new running scheme, look great all year, and is also an absolute animal in pass protection. He's been a great player for a very long time, and I just couldn't leave him off my team. Marshall Yanda, terrific season. My next guy, the center, Rodney Hudson. You look, the Oakland Raiders coming into the season, if people had told me they were going to have one of the best offensive lines in football, have a rookie rusher go for well over 1,000 yards, I probably wouldn't have agreed with them. But the fact that this guy has taken 2 young tackles, Richie Incognito has come out of retirement and dominated, was almost very lucky to not be on this team. I'm putting a lot of that down to Rodney Hudson for his leadership, plus his play on the field has been second to none this year in terms of center. It hasn't been a great center season for guys. Travis Frederick's coming back from injuries. Alex Mack is good in Atlanta still, but the team success wasn't there. And then the only other guy was really Jason Kelce, who I just think Hudson's played that little bit better than. Look, this guy's solid as a rock. He has helped a line that's done a great job and really turned around and can be the building point for the now Las Vegas Raiders for the next few years. I'm a really big fan of Rodney Hudson. My last guy, my right guard, Brandon Brooks of the Philadelphia Eagles. Everyone knows I'm not a big Philadelphia Eagle fan, so for me to pick an Eagle, he must be good. This guy is big and he's strong, and the biggest thing is he is super consistent. He dominated pretty much every snap and helped the Eagles down the stretch run the ball really well while having other injuries to the offensive line. The Eagles have won the NFC East because of their running game down the stretch, and I think Brandon Brooks was a massive part of that. So congratulations, Brandon, on making the All-Pro team. That's my offense, guys. I'll just get into a bit of a recap. So I've just gone through the offensive line. We've got Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Christian McCaffrey at running back. We've got Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver, George Kittle at the tight end, and Chris Godwin in the slot. Stanley, Yanda, Hudson, Brooks, and Ramczyk make up my offensive line. Again, you disagree with anything, let me know who you would replace it with. I'd love to hear from everyone. Comment down in the... put your comments down under the YouTube video, and yeah, I'll happily respond to everyone on who their replacement should be. Let's get into special teams. Guys, special teams are a big part, and I'll start with my punter, who I went with Mitch Wisnowski. He's an Aussie. He's been on my podcast twice, and he can kick the crap out of a ball. He makes a team any day of the week. Congratulations, Mitch, on a great season. I think you've really proved that pick, that 4th round pick, was well worth it by the San Francisco 49ers. My kicker is Justin Tucker. I don't know why people would argue this. It's always Tucker. He's the best kicker ever in the NFL. I'm always going to select him, whether he has a slightly down year or not. Justin Tucker's my kicker any day of the week. And again, Baltimore Ravens, one of the best team in the AFC, best team in the NFL. So he gets that nod as well. Cordarrelle Patterson of the Chicago Bears, he is my returner. I also like Patterson being my returner because he's really good at all the other positions. He plays gunner, he does kickoff, he does everything. So he's kind of a bit of a versatile guy, but as a returner this year was easily the best for me, and he makes my team. My special team specialist is Matthew Slater of the New England Patriots. This is the guy I want on my team that will do gunner, will block for field goals, basically do everything on special teams. My number one special teams guy. Matthew Slater, he's a real leader of the Patriots, been there a long time. He does all things right, and I found whenever there was a big play involved on special teams, it was normally involving Matthew Slater. He can turn games, and again, team success for the New England Patriots. I had to get him on the team, and that was an easy selection for me. Let's get into the defense, and we'll start with the interior defensive line. Don't know if anyone's going to agree with me here. I think Aaron Donald could still be the defensive player of the year this year. I know his stats are down. 48 tackles, 12.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 12 tackles for loss. This guy passes the eye test. He gets doubled or triple teamed on every single play. He affects the game massively, and when he doesn't get double teamed, he absolutely dominates. He is the best defensive player in the NFL for me. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, I will have no argument against it. I think he's still awesome, even though his stats were down. So he walks onto my All-Pro team. The next guy, DeForest Buckner of the San Francisco 49ers. Another guy that has done the dirty work without a ton of statistical reward. He plays on a great defense and is a guy that demands double teams most plays. His stats, 62 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 6 tackles for loss. They're not going to blow you away, stats, and that's not what I'm trying to sell you on. This guy is an eye test guy on a very good defense, so he passes 2 of my key theories. Does he have team success? Absolutely. Number 1 seed in the NFC and a great defense. Down the stretch, they did drop off a little bit, but I need to take into account the first 3 quarters of the season too when I'm selecting this team. And Buckner has been dominant for a really good team, even if the stats don't line up, and I want him on my interior working with Aaron Donald. So the 2 number 99s there for me. Let's get to the edge defenders. My first guy is TJ Watt, 55 tackles, 14.5 sacks, 8 forced fumbles, 4 recoveries, 2 interceptions, and 11 tackles for loss. He's balled out this season for the Steelers, again on a great defense, and consistently creates pressures. He's got a real knack for stripping the ball and making big plays, and is an absolute no-brainer for me. A guy who's probably won't get Defensive Player of the Year, but if he did, I don't think I'd have too much of an argument against him. He's been pretty good all year. My other starting edge defender is Shaquille Barrett of the Tampa Bay Bucks. This is a lot of a statistical pick. 58 tackles, 19.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 1 interception, and 5 tackles for loss. He's been a big reason the Bucks defense was so good. Not a massive reason, but still a reason. And he's had 19.5 sacks. That's enough for me to get into a team. Anyone who gets that sort of sack totals is going to be pushing my team. An absolute breakout star this season that will be cashing in. He's a free agent. This guy's going to get big money. A guy that no one really wanted. Tampa Bay took a flyer on a 1-year deal and has absolutely dominated as an edge rusher. So, yeah, could not leave him off my team, unfortunately. My third down rusher, and I'm going to get flack here. I know I'm going to. Chandler Jones had 19 sacks as well this year, and I haven't put him as my third down rusher. I've gone with Zadarius Smith. 55 tackles, 13.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 6 tackles for loss. Got the team success, which Chandler Jones doesn't. Does have the sack totals. 13.5 is still a very good sack number for an outside linebacker. He also has 90 pressures this season in the NFL. That's quarterback pressures that don't relate to sacks. That is the most in the league by about 15. So when I'm thinking about a guy on third down that I want to come in, rush, and get pressure, this was the first guy that stood out for me. He's a free agent signing again that Green Bay took a chance on coming from Baltimore. They've got the team success. They've got the team defense success. I think he was a very good selection, had a very, very good year. So I went with Darius Smith. But again, happy to hear arguments for other guys there. Let's get to my off-ball linebackers. I've gone with Lavonte David. I'll start with 123 tackles, 1 sack, 1 interception, 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 11 tackles for loss. This is another guy that played on a terrific run defense. He's a terrific athlete that can take on blocks and a really good tackler. This is a purely an eye test guy for me. The number 1 run defense in the NFL stands out for me, which was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So as a linebacker, that's a big tick in the right direction. And the eye test. Go back and watch some tape, and I'm sure you'll agree he deserves to be on this team. If not, give me your replacement. But Lavonte David gets the nod for me. And also, Ndamukong Suh, if this was a run-stuffing team, he would have got on this team comfortably. My other guy is Darius Leonard of the Indianapolis Colts. Missed 4 games this year. Still had 121 tackles, 5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions, and 5 tackles for loss. This is an eye test guy, again, can cover almost any player on the field, which shows from the interception totals. 5 is, tied for second in the NFL. He's a great blitzer and plays the run with speed and tenacity. You need to watch this guy move. He moves like a man on a mission. I cannot leave him off my team, the second-year linebacker, Darius Leonard. And that makes up my front 7, guys. Let's get into my cornerbacks. This was the easiest 2 selections for me. I'll start with Stephon Gilmore, 53 tackles, 6 interceptions, which was tied for the lead with Tre'Davious White and another guy coming up on my team. Also the 20 passes defense, which is insane. Stephon Gilmore, if he gets Defensive Player of the Year, again, would not have an argument. Best corner in football, and his season is the best I've seen for a very long time in the NFL, maybe ever. His way he shut down guys. Not many guys had any success against him, and he led the league in interceptions. This is a no-brainer for me. Along with Tre'Davious White of the Buffalo Bills, the 48 tackles, the 6 interceptions, 17 passes defensed. The only guy that's been better than White was Gilmore, and he's on my team. White has not allowed a touchdown all year with over 500 man coverage snaps. That's an insane stat. To not allow a touchdown as the number 1 corner on a team is awesome. He's a lockdown corner on a really good defense on a playoff team. So they get the nod for me. Both have great team success, both individual statistics, and both pass the eye test. So they walk onto my lineup. Now, let's get to my safeties. Now, as you can see, I've got 3. So I chose that my nickel would be Minkah Fitzpatrick. And let's start with him. 69 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 5 interceptions, 9 passes defensed. I want this guy on my team because of his versatility as my 5th defensive back. He can cover like a corner, he can tackle and can play the ball like a free safety, and is also a handy blitzer in the right moments. He made big plays for the Steelers all year as soon as he got traded over from the Miami Dolphins. At one point was in contention for Defensive Player of the Year, dropped off later in the season as the team started to struggle, but this was a team that lost their quarterback and the defense absolutely stepped up. I've got a couple of guys from Pittsburgh on this team from the defense, and I want him to be my nickel guy, my slot guy, my 5th defensive back and 3rd safety. Next guy I'm going with is Anthony Harris. Absolute breakout season. He's great against the run and plays the ball well in the air, hence why he has 6 interceptions, and he's tied for the league lead. On a good team, was a shining light on the back end, and I actually went back because I saw his stats all year, and I saw how he was going, and he was playing well, and his stats were good. I thought, I've got to go watch this guy and see what he's like. So I went back and watched some All-22 tape on him, and boy, did he pass the eye test. Absolute breakout season for Anthony Harris, and he is a must-start on my team. Now, my 3rd safety and my last guy I'm going to discuss, Jamal Adams. Adams is one of my favorite players in the league. The effort and passion that he plays with is second to none. He missed a few games, and his numbers are still absolutely outstanding. 75 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, 7 pass defense, and 7 tackles for loss. He's an absolute versatile weapon. He took a group of relatively unknown and young players and turned them into the 7th best overall defense and the number 2 run defense. I think that Jamal Adams should be the Defensive Player of the Year. He is my pick for Defensive Player of the Year. As I said, a few guys in here I've said wouldn't bother me if they got picked, but he is my guy. I don't care about the stats. He's an absolute star and is awesome to watch. I thoroughly enjoy watching Jamal Adams go about his football, so I've really enjoyed him. That's the defense. I'll just go through it again. So we've got TJ Watt, Donald, Buckner, and Shaquille Barrett. and Zadarius Smith coming in from the third down on my front. I've got Darius Leonard and Levante David as my linebackers, Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White as my starting corners, Jamal Adams, Anthony Harris as my starting safeties, and then Minkah Fitzpatrick as my nickel, or my fifth defensive back, slots himself in there, which is, awesome. I'm really happy with that team, my offense and defense. Guys, that's it from the Vault Studio. JA here. If you want to catch our podcast, we do a weekly podcast, just basically recapping the news. So you can find the Vault Studio on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Obviously, find us on YouTube because you're watching this right now. Please subscribe to the video. Please go to iTunes, find our podcast, Spotify, Castbox, whatever podcasting you use, and subscribe there. Give us a rating, give us a follow. And guys, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Hit subscribe, hit the little bell, and you'll start seeing a lot more videos coming from us. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.